Hello, friends. I'm Dr. Major Neerja Mercy, and I'm here to talk to you about the wildlife conservation. And regarding this, I would like to start with this quote that we have not inherited this earth from our ancestors, but we have borrowed it from our next generation, and which clearly indicates that whatever we are enjoying on this earth today, we are supposed to keep it like this for our next generation, and it is our duty to conserve the nature. And I would like to tell you that I have been a professor of biochemistry, and I have done my MBA in HR and industrial relations. And my passion is to talk about environment. And here I am in front of you talking about the wildlife conservation. Why do we think that environmental education is important? Because in this consume and dispose world, or maybe we can say that use and throw world, the environmental education aims at producing people who are knowledgeable and who are concerned about the biophysical environment and its associated problems, and they are aware how to help solve these problems and also are motivated to work towards their solution. Environment is made up of abiotic components, that is air, water, and land, and the biotic components, that is the plants and animals. And we also fall in this biotic component, and we require all these things to live on this earth. Now, wildlife conservation studies can be studied in the following headings, like its conservation importance and threats, monitoring wildlife and managing its habitats, managing the wildlife diseases, capturing and restraining the wildlife animals, and conservation genetics, ex-situ conservation, and management of changes. But I would be touching upon very few things because this is going to be a preliminary lecture on the wildlife conservation. Now, what is wildlife conservation? It is the practice of protecting animal species and their habitats. It is achieved partially through legislation such as the Endangered Species Act, the establishment and protection of public lands, the responsible public practices that conserve wild animals and population. And in this thing, I would like to draw your attention towards the term conservation areas in India, which refers to the well demarcated large geographical areas with an established conservation plan. And in India, a number of conservation plans have been set up for the purpose of studying, conserving, and spreading about the betterment of the highly endangered species of wildlife. This is the habitat. I want to show you that there are forests, different type of forests, then there is mountain terrain, different type of mountain terrain, then there are rivers, there are ponds, there are plains. All these are the habitat for the wildlife. You can see this. The aquatic, the forest, the human habitat, shrubs and grassland, wetlands and riparian and special type of wildlife habitats. Now there is an International Union of Conservation of Nature, which was formerly known as World Conservation Union, and which is the network of environmental organizations founded as the International Union of Protection of Nature in October 1948 in France. And it has classified species into the following categories: that extinct, extinct in wild, critically endangered, endangered, and vulnerable. And all this classification is based on the data collected across the world. Bald eagle, I have shown you this photograph, and whooping crane are one of those endangered species. Now, why there is a need to conserve the nature? There are three reasons that why we should conserve nature. Number one is it is wildlife is beneficial for humans. Number two, it promotes diversity. And number three is the conservation of the natural habitats, which is also beneficial for humans since it helps keep the essential watersheds intact and ensuring clean, fresh water. Now, what are the different reasons why the wildlife is becoming endangered? Number one is the toxic waste, which is released from different companies, and they are released into the river, and animals use this water for drinking. and the deadly chemicals poison the water that can prove fatal for the existence of wildlife. And there are various type of pollutants, the air pollutants, carbon dioxide, monoxide, and I have listed so many that you can see. Then there are water pollutants, oil, chemicals, microbes, solid waste, garbage dump, thermal pollution. Then there are the landfills, which are very close to land, which is forest land, because most of the landfills are between, they are away from the urban area and they are towards the forest area, and therefore they are the also become the reason which pollute the forests. Then another reason for the species becoming endangered is the poaching. Poaching means illegal killing. And wildlife, it is so sad to see innocent animals by being killed because of the because their skin, bone, and teeth, which are the assets of the animals, they are sold in the market for cash, gold, and weapons. Now, another reason is that they are not only used by the market here in India, but also in the Western market. The demand is very much high, and they are ready to pay enormous price, like it is kind of a black market, and therefore the killing of animals takes place. And the final reason, I think, is the urbanization and the rapid industrialization, wherein we can say that we are encroaching into their habitat to make our homes. So we are taking away their homes to build our homes, which is very, very sad. Now, one another thing I would like to draw your attention towards is the conservation genetics, which is an interdisciplinary subfield of population genetics that aims to understand the dynamics of genes in the particular population, principally to avoid extinction. Therefore, it applies genetic methods to the conservation and restoration of the biodiversity. So, that is the importance of conservation genetics. Now, conservation of biodiversity can be done by two types: in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. Conservation is the protection, preservation, management, or restoration of the wildlife and natural resources such as forests and water. Through the conservation of biodiversity and the survival of many species and habitats which are threatened due to human activities can be ensured. And there is an urgent need not only to manage and conserve the biotic wealth but also restore the degraded ecosystems. Humans have also directly or indirectly dependent on biodiversity for sustenance to a considerable extent. However, increasing population pressures and the development activities have led to large scale depletion of the natural resources. Now, there are some steps taken by the Government of India, like Project Tiger, initiated in 1972. This project is sponsored by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Project Tiger has been significant success in the recovery of habitat and increase in the population of tigers in the reserve areas. Like from the scanty 268 in 9 reserves in 1972 when it was started, now we have 2000 plus tigers, which is a very good thing. Now, initiated, seeing the success story of the Project Tiger, when another Project Elephant was initiated in 1992, and then similarly Project Crocodile, Project Turtle, and Project Vulture have also been initiated by the Indian government. Now, to protect the biodiversity, Government of India has taken a few steps like the Wildlife Protection Act in 1972. It created protected areas such as national parks, sanctuaries, and conservation reserves. Then there is a rule of 2010, wetland rules, which is also for the conservation and management of the wetlands of India. Then we have to curb the illegal trade of wildlife. There is Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. Then special organizations like Wildlife Institute of India, Bombay Natural History Society, and Salim Ali Center for Ornithology. You all know that Salim Ali was a very renowned ornithology, and because of his name, the center is known as Salim Ali Center for Ornithologists. He was ornithology is the study of birds, and there is natural history which is formed to conduct research and conservation of wildlife. Here I would like to draw your attention towards the gyps vulture. The population of the gyps vulture was declining because they were eating the dead bodies, and the dead bodies had this diclofenac drug, and therefore it got bioaccumulated in vultures and they started dying. So the government of India has banned the veterinary use of diclofenac drug. Now, for restoring, restocking, and the endangered species, the central government of has initiated integrated development of wildlife habitat scheme, and which was later modified it by including a new component, recovery of endangered species, which included animals like Hangul stag deer in Jammu Kashmir, vultures in Punjab, Haryana, and Gujarat, snow leopard in Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Arunachal Pradesh, swiftlet in Andaman and Nicobar Island, Nilgiri Thar in Tamil Nadu, Sangai deer in Manipur. And here, financial and technical assistance is also extended to the state government to provide better means of protection and conservation for the specified species. Now, state governments have been asked to strengthen the field formations and increase patrolling in and around the protected areas. Government of India intensified anti-poaching activities and initiated special patrolling strategy for monsoon season, deploying the anti-poaching squad. They have constituted the National Tiger Conservation Authority. There is a special tiger protection force. Then e-surveillance has been started in Kanziranga National Park in Assam and borders of Ratapani Wildlife Sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh. These are certain acts I have listed. These are the important environment and biodiversity acts passed by the Indian government. Fisheries Act, Indian Forest Act, Mining and Mineral Development Regulation Act, Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Wildlife Protection, Water, Forest Conservation, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution, Environment Protection Act, Biological Diversity Act, Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act. In India, following types of natural habitats are being maintained: the national parks, the wildlife sanctuaries, and the biosphere reserves. India has over 600 protected areas, which includes over 90 national parks, over 500 animal sanctuaries, and 15 biosphere reserves. National parks are the places where which is strictly reserved for the betterment of the wildlife, where activities like forestry, grazing, on cultivation are not permitted, not any private ownership rights are allowed. Whereas in wildlife sanctuaries, it is the protected areas again. They are reserved for conservation of only animals, and human activities like harvesting of timber, collecting minor forest products, and private ownership rights are allowed so long as they are not interfering with the well being of the animals. Here again, the boundaries of the sanctuaries are not well defined, and controlled biotic interference is permitted, that is, the tourist activity is permitted. There are biosphere reserves. It is a special category of protected areas where human population also forms part of the system, and they are large protected areas of usually more than 5,000 square kilometers. Now, biosphere reserves have three parts: core, buffer, and transition zones, because they are very, very big. 5,000 square kilometer is divided into three parts like this. Now, what are the different types of conservation? Conservation can be broadly divided into two types: in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. In situ is means it is on the site, at the place only, that protected areas like national parks, sanctuaries, and biosphere reserves, sacred forests, and lakes. And ex situ is seed banks, gene banks, long term captive breeding, animal translocations, tissue culture banks, cryopreservation of gametes and embryos, and botanical gardens and zoological gardens or zoos. These are ex situ, means they are not at the site but they are done somewhere else, in other places. So, in situ conservation, I have already explained. It is on the site conservation or the conservation of genetic resources and natural population of plants and animal species. In the process of protecting an endangered plant or animal species in its natural habitat, it is either by protecting or cleaning up the habitat itself, or by defending the species from predators. and it is applied to conservation of agricultural biodiversity in agroforestry by farmers, especially those using unconventional farming practices. And in situ conservation is being done by declaring areas as the protected areas, whereas ex situ conservation is the preservation of components of biological diversity outside their natural habitats, which involves conservation of genetic resources such as wild and cultivated or species, draws on a diverse body of techniques and facilities. Such strategies include establishment of botanical gardens, zoos, conservation strands and genes, pollens, seeds, seedlings, tissue culture, and DNA banks. These are listed, like these are eight. Now, after I have discussed all this, I would like you to feel accountable that we have to act now. We have to. What we can do is we can do the and take the laws very seriously, and we should see that they are enforced, and whatever is in our hands is that we do not have to pollute this environment. We have to go green, and we have to exercise the good choices, the green choices. Now I want to leave you with two questions: how can we help in wildlife conservation, the causes, and how is it going to affect me, the consequences? Now, food for thought, like eco justice, climate justice, least contributor is the most affected, is rooted in commoditization of labor and natural resources. Colonization had a central aim of acquiring natural resources, subsurface coal mining, coal combustion, extraction, refining of oils, and transport of fossil fuels. These are certain things I am leaving with you so that you can think about it. And there are some earth consequences that seven provisions describe the processes that make life possible on earth, the diversity and the abundance of these life forms possible, and intricate nature of life in general. And these are earth's energy exchange with sun and space, soil building, cycling and recycling of the biosphere, water purification and detoxification, fruitlessness and abundant life, global circulation of water and air, human ability to learn from creation. Now, these are human consequences like changes in the Earth's energy exchange, climate change, land degradation, deforestation, water quality degradation, species extinction, genetic mutation, chemicals leading to global toxification, and cultural degradation. Now, what needs to be done? We need to renew the vision of good life, consumerism, false state of happiness. Like that is why why should we buy the products made up of the animal skin, bone, or teeth? Sustainable development plans. We should not pollute the environment. Think of the other plans. We should not, destroy their habitat in when we are building our habitats, our homes. Use of alternative renewable energy resources, innovative thinking, indigenous research and developmental plans, and no cut copy paste from other countries, because in other countries there is something which is successful here. For example, in other countries where the climate is very cold, they can build their houses made up of only glass, but we in India shouldn't do this because it causes the global warming or the warming. Rise above the financial gains while decision making. We should think of the bioethics. How can we do it? We can think globally, act locally, and we have to follow the legislation at all levels. These are certain things that I want to leave with you. Food for thought, you can see. Thank you.